When has a gut feeling saved your life? Serious. Attention. Serious tag notice jokes, puns, and off-topic comments are not permitted. Link. Reddit. com/r/askreddit/wiki/index/wiki_rule 6. In any comment, parent or child, parent comments that aren't from the target group will be removed, along with their child replies. Report comments that violate these rules. Posts that have few relevant answers within the first hour, and posts that are not appropriate for the serious tag will be removed. Consider doing an AMA request instead. Thanks for your cooperation and enjoy the discussion. I'm a bot, and this action was performed automatically. Please contact the moderators of this subreddit /message/compose/to/r/askreddit if you have any questions or concerns. I almost got kidnapped once. I was like 23 or so. I was walking down my street at a little after dusk. I saw a van approaching a little ahead. No lights on. Didn't think much of it due to the time of day. The van slowed down and almost started creeping. As I was approaching this part of the sidewalk which had a tall solid wall fence to a community. This gave me some pause in that quick moment. For me to keep walking, I'd have to go between the wall and the van. In the little time it took me to take a couple of steps, and as the van was getting close, I noticed that the side door was slowly sliding open. The one thought in my mind was, why isn't the light turning on inside the van? When you open the door of a vehicle, the light should come on inside it, unless you deliberately switch that off. And I just ran to the median. I ran in front of the van and across the street. Because if they're gonna have some use of road, kill me, have at it. But they are not getting me in one glorious piece. Immediately, the van took off like someone lit it on fire. From a slow crawl to full speed. As I looked after it to see the plates, I noticed it had no plates, and still no lights. I called the police. Of course. They sent cars out, and didn't find the van. I never had anything like this happen again, and I'm just an ordinary person. So I don't suspect it was targeted. I was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. Greater than sign. But they are not getting me in one glorious piece. Made me laugh. Great story. Good instincts. Made me laugh too. I had a friend's dad have a talk with us about that once. Saying it's better to be dead than live through what they would have planned. Absolutely. I've heard this also, and support it fully as something to teach and follow. So important to point out. And now, thanks to OP, there's a catchy new way to explain it to people. You gotta laugh or you'll cry, right? I was driving a friend home late at night when I was around 21. She lived in a pretty rural area outside of Street Louis Mo, and about a quarter mile from her house was an old abandoned farm and farmhouse. I always thought of this place as non-threatening, as she told me she and her two sisters would go there as kids and they found an attic full of cool things, including a trunk of vintage woman's clothing and old love letters, like something out of a movie. Anyway, I'm driving her home, and it's a hot, humid Missouri summer and we have the windows open as the late night had offered some cool air. We are also singing at the top of our lungs. We pass the abandoned farm, and I drop her off at her house. I wait long enough to see she makes it inside, and I head back out the way I came. I'm driving along, and I get to almost where the farm is, and I see two things in the road. My danger meter goes off as I had just driven this road and there was nothing there. I put the windows up and make sure the doors are locked. I get closer and I realize the items are two car batteries spaced out in the road, which was basically a one-lane road in a way that I would have to get out and move them to drive on the road. I immediately knew I wasn't getting out of the car, so I picked the side of the road that had the lesser ditch and I gunned it. I was driving a little south and remember feeling the car run over branches and things in the little ditch. But I just gunned it and got out of there. All the way home I felt creeped out and kept checking my rearview mirror. I called my friend the next morning and told her what had happened, and we both agreed it was weird. Shortly after that I moved to another state and didn't think much of it after that. Fast forward to 2 to 3 years later, when I was back visiting my hometown. I randomly ran into my old friend and she ran up to me with wide eyes and grabbed my arms. She asked me if I remembered what I told her that night. I said yes, and she proceeded to tell me that not too long after that had happened her family was awakened in the middle of the night to someone pounding on their sliding glass door. Her dad went to check and saw two naked, injured women and let them in, and called 911. They had been abducted from Street Louis City, about 40 minutes away, by two men, and brought to the old, abandoned farmhouse where the men tortured and raped them. The women somehow managed to get free and ran to the only light they could see, the light over my friend's garage. They survived, but the men were never caught. There was evidence the men had been going there for a while. My friend was convinced they had put the batteries in the road to lure me out of the car. I'm just really glad my gut told me not to. Edit. Grandma. The same sort of thing happened to me. I live in rural Connecticut and my mom was driving me down dark, twisty roads to my friend's house, and in the middle of the road was yellow caution tape. Not police line. Do not cross tape, but just tape that said caution, blocking the whole road. It had been clearly ripped and tied back together in some places. My mom examined it and gunned it in reverse and got out of there fast. That same night, some woman had gotten out to examine it and had gotten back in the car to call the police because she found it suspicious, but not suspicious enough to leave before calling 911. She was grabbed out of her car, but the people who grabbed her didn't know she had called 911 and the police rolled up as the car was driving away with her in the trunk. They chased them down and she lived, but it was scary. Trust your gut with roadblocks. When I was around 18, I was on a back road with some friends and a girl I didn't know was driving really fast. Now, I'm a bit of an adrenaline junkie, and I have always enjoyed a calculated risk in the name of a good time. But on this occasion I told her to either slow the duck down or let me out. I literally had to start screaming at her before she listened and slowed down. A week later she crashed on that same stretch of road at 90 miles per hour, killing her and the 3 passengers of her car. Yikes. My husband is a state trooper and has always said the wreck that sticks with him the most was a group of 4 17-18-year-olds in a car speeding on the freeway. One of the kids was screaming and begging the driver to let him out. The driver pulled over and let him out as he and the other 2 passengers made fun of him for being a pussy and not wanting to have fun. A couple miles later, the driver flew off an overpass, went over the guardrail, and onto the freeway below, killing him and the other 2 passengers instantly and ejecting one out of the car. Luckily there was no one below that they fell onto. My husband always remembers that kid who demanded to get out and how terrified and shaken he was when he walked up on what happened and was able to explain that he was in the car with them just minutes prior and would have been dead had he not been a pussy. Stories like this is why I hate being driven by people I don't know well or trust. I will never understand some drivers when I'm driving anyone around, whether it's 1 or 3 people. I'm always such a cautious driver, more so than when I'm driving by myself. If I have others in my car, I take it as their lives are in my hands, so I drive so much more carefully. I couldn't imagine driving like a dumb duck just to have some laughs. Few years ago I was at a bar with a couple of friends. All was good. We were drinking and having fun. All of a sudden, we heard this discussion taking place just a couple of tables from us. 2 guys decided to have a shouting/threat match. I stopped everything to pay attention to them. My friends were making fun of me, saying I was gossipy. One of the guys in the discussion got up and left. Immediately after he left I told my friends we had to go. Now, let's go now. They didn't get why I was like that, but I'm their friend since forever. They reluctantly agreed. We went to a different bar in a different neighborhood, but I couldn't take my mind off of those 2 guys. The next day, the news were talking about a bar fight. Apparently the guy who got up went home, grabbed a gun, and came back for a drive-by, killed 4 people in the process. My grandpa taught me to never ignore my gut, and I couldn't be happier to have listened. Edit. A few words. Edit 2. A few people have approached me asking if I already had published this story before. I honestly don't remember if I did. If I did, I'm sorry. Didn't wanna repost an old story. A lesson that I learned in high school, and it always proves true. Mid-altercation or argument, If one leaves the place briskly and suddenly walk away, the other guy has not run away. No, he just was fetching a weapon or calling up his buddies. It is clear and obvious warning sign. I'm glad that you know. Yep, but I honestly thought he'd bring a bunch of guys and they'd brawl. I was stunned and speechless because I've never thought he'd bring a gun and do a drive-by. My now wife and I did the long distance thing in college, and I planned on doing my normal routine to visit her, leave Chicagoland in the morning, get to her early afternoon on Friday, while I'm closing my store on Thursday night, and get a feeling I should leave that night. So I said F it and left that night. A little after lunch on Friday, tornado sirens go off. I don't think anything of it until I head back home Sunday and drive through a town about half hour north of her. It got lit up by the tornado. I quickly realize that I had left at my normal time. I would have been smack dab in the middle of tornado. When the tornado that decimated Greensburg, KS came through, my family and I were on our way to my grandparents' house. We drove through Greensburg. My mom noticed the storm was getting really bad and decided not to stop until we got to my grandparents' house. By the time we got to their house, it was on the news that the tornado had leveled the town just minutes after we left the city limits. I don't remember ever seeing a storm quite so ominous. It was nearly totally dark outside, but something about that particular storm, I don't know. It was freaky. Edit. Spelling. Supercils can look real ducking sinister. My mum knew something was wrong with me when I was younger. Doctors didn't want to see me for another 2 weeks. Mum went into a blind rage over the phone, telling them that she was taking me to get checked, whether they liked it or not. We got to the GP. He puts a stethoscope on my back and smells my breath, then says we need to get him to hospital now. Turns out I have type 1 diabetes, and if I'd waited another day I would have died. Edit. The breath part is due to the buildup of ketones in the blood, as I was in the severe stages of diabetic ketoacidosis. Edit 2. It smelled like apples. I have a similar story about my sister. She always had pain in her knees and back. My mother took her to a lot of doctors, but they all said the same. She is too young for arthritis. It's just growth pain, and it will go away over time. My mother knew there was something wrong, and she brought my sister in a hospital and got on doctors' nerves until they checked all the markers. They found the markers. My sister has an autoimmune disease called Wegener's granulomatosis, and without help she would have died after maximum 7 years of horrific pain. Juvenile arthritis is a thing as well, and early diagnosis is a lifesaver. I'm glad your sister got diagnosed in time. I'm glad your mother persisted. Lump in my right breast. 43 years old. Clean mammogram 5 months earlier. I just knew. 4 different doctors told me it was nothing and to come back in a year. I did not and found a 5th. Yeah. I had to argue my way into being diagnosed with a rare and aggressive form of breast cancer. On the bright side, Thursday was my 5 years all clear date. Felt hinky about one of many growing skin spots. Took 6 doctor visits asking they look at skin spot, all saying it's nothing, don't worry. But cat sniffing the spot continuously made me worry. Took this evidence to new doc on day. Dermatologist happened to be visiting. My doc laughed it off like all the others, but said a dermatologist might be interested in weird shape. Dermatologist took one look, sniffed it, said get biopsy right now. Biopsy showed aggressive sideral cancer under the skin. The spot was the iceberg tip. Got a big lump of me cut out, but just in time. Glad you persisted. What a nightmare that must have been for you. But the dermatologist sniffed it? This may sound stupid, but do some types of cancer smell off? I was taking my mom to a follow-up appointment for back surgery the month before. The freeway was closed due to a car accident and Life Flight was called to transport the people injured in the accident. The highway patrol was funneling everyone off of the freeway to the right side exit. I had the strongest feeling we needed to move to the left farthest lane. So I did. No more than a minute after I moved over, a garbage truck came barreling down the freeway and crashed into the car that was in front of us in the other lane so fast that it lifted the front end of the truck and it landed on top of the car. We were in a tiny sports car that would have crumpled like a tin can under the weight of a garbage truck and definitely would have killed my mom and me in a second. Edited for clarity. The sports car was a 1999 Mercury Cougar. I'm 5 feet 10 Swede/Spaniard mix. It was tiny for me. Ha ha ha. Glad you both are well, and you trusted your feelings. I get really bad vibes from the car park in work. It's a giant, poorly lit multi-story, and I've seen enough horror films to know I shouldn't be taking it lightly. Whenever I get in, I pay attention to the floors people call the lifter to keep an eye on where they're going. One time a guy got in front of me and pressed 6, while I was parked on 8. He didn't get out at 6, and was still in the lift as I got to my floor. I leave. He doesn't. So I guess he's remembered he's on another floor. But just before I get to the dark area with all the cars, I turned back. This guy had waited about 30 seconds, therefore held the lift to wait, and silently emerged to follow me. I just stopped and stared him down. He had a deer in the headlights look, and turned straight back to the lift. I have no idea if it saved my life, but it freaked me the duck out. Whenever I get in, I pay attention to the floors people call the lifter to keep an eye on where they're going. I do this too. I also never tell the cab and or Uber driver where I'm actually going. I always get dropped off a few houses or a few blocks away, depending on the area. A pain in the lungs when I inhaled. I've never been stabbed. Don't know what it's like, but the pain should have been equal to it, if not worse. It had happened before. Years ago. Some hot water in the shower and the pain was gone. My wife, then girlfriend, insisted on going to her. I insisted on hot water. I feel like we should go and see a doctor. She had said. I was diagnosed with pulmonary embolism on both lungs. Doctor said 1 or 2 more hours and you were gone. So yeah, I owe my wife one. Why have I read like 6 posts about a pulmonary embolism now on this thread? I didn't realize I have one more thing to dread every ache and pain. Glad you're good, and that your wife took your pain seriously. I was utterly carefree when it came to health, until this incident at the age of 32. Since then, my high school biology teacher's words echo in my mind every now and then, which I had laughed at the time. From the biological standpoint, being alive is an aspect of sheer luck. A single internal organ failure, and one ceases to exist. Hey, thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more daily Reddit videos.